This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi. Last week we gave the introduction to Sefer Ezra. Why Sefer Ezra begins with the letter Vav. We explained it's machlekes between Rashi and the Ramban. Rashi learns Ezra is a connection to Sefer Daniel. It continues with the explanation of the prophecy of Yirmiyah when the 70 years of Bavel will be over, how it's calculated. And the Ramban, at the in Parsha Shemais, he learns that Sefer Ezra is a continuation of Sefer Divrei Hayamim, and that is why the last two psukim of Divrei Hayamim and the first two psukim of Ezra are identical. Okay, so let us begin. Uvishnas achas leKoresh melech Paras. In the first year of Koresh, the king of Paras, Rashi pointed out that Koresh was a melech kosher. The word Koresh could be unscrambled to spell kosher. L'chlois dvar Hashem mipir Yirmiyahu, when the word of Hashem was ending from Yirmiyahu, in other words, as Yirmiyahu's prophecy is coming to an end, Heyer Hashem es ruach Koresh melech Paras. Hashem stirred the spirit of Koresh, the king of Paras. Now, how exactly did Hashem stir the spirit of Koresh, the king of Paras? Koresh was not a Navi. He was a Melech Kosher, but he was not a Navi. So the Malbim explains that if you look in Sefer Yosifin, when Daniel was called upon to interpret the handwriting on the wall, that Belshazzar would be destroyed, and he was in fact killed that night, so that nevuah became known to Daryavish and Koresh, and therefore they decided to build the Beis HaMikdash. Or it could be, says the Malbim, that Koresh was aware of the famous nevuah of Yeshaya. Yeshaya Hanavi in Parak Memhei had a nevuah that Koresh, the nevuah went like this: Hu yivna iri v'galusi yishalach. He will build my city, and he will send forth my exiles. In fact, if there's a Gemara Megillah over here, Gemara Megillah, we're going to take a Gemara Megillah, we're going to take a Gemara in Yuma, and we're going to take a Gemara in Erechin.
I wasn't there. That's why I was wondering what you're saying.
The Gemara says that the Gemara Masechta Megillah on Daf Yud Beis quotes the nevuah of Yeshaya Hanavi. The Gemara says that we're going to see, but Koresh was assigned the task in Yeshaya Parak Mem Dalet. If anyone has a Yeshaya, if they could bring up a Sefer Yeshaya, in Sefer Yeshaya Parak Mem Dalet, at the end of the Parak, Yeshaya was given a nevuah that Koresh will rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. So very possibly, Koresh became aware. Thank you very much. Koresh became aware of this prophecy. I'll read it to you in Yeshaya Mem Dalet. The last pasuk. Ha'omer leKoresh roig, the one who says to Koresh, my shepherd, B'chol cheptzi yashim, he will fulfill all my will. V'leimar liyushalayim tibaneh, to say to Jerusalem to be built, v'heichal tivased, and to found the Beis HaMikdash. That's a famous nevuah that Yeshaya had regarding Koresh. So even though Hashem didn't tell it to Koresh directly, but very possibly Koresh was aware of this nevuah. Okay? And he's taking action. He's acting upon the nevuah. Now, just to know the sequence of events again, so you have Nebuchadnezzar was the first king of Bavel, followed by who? Evel Merodach, who ruled a very short amount of time. After Evel Merodach was Belshazzar. After Belshazzar was Daryavish the first, the Mede. Daryavish the Mede. Daryavish the Mede had a son-in-law by the name of Koresh. That's what we're dealing with. After Koresh came someone who we're very familiar with, Achashverosh. And after Achashverosh came Daryavish the second, who was Achashverosh's son. Okay? And now we're going to see Koresh allows for the rebuilding of the second Beis HaMikdash. However, when he realized that the economy needs the Jewish goldsmiths and blacksmiths, he stopped the permission. He put an end. He said, anyone who's already crossed the Euphrates, you may continue to go. Anyone who has not yet crossed the Euphrates, you stay right where you are. We can't have the economy fall apart.
Immigration reform.
Right. And then ultimately, because of the accusations of the adversaries of Yehuda, Koresh put an end to it, and it was continued 18 years later by Daryavish II.
You know, Koresh had the nevuah from Yeshaya.
Yeah.
Yeshaya told him, but he didn't believe in the nevuah. That's why he stopped it. The economy was more important than the nevuah.
No, the economy was, not everyone has to go. But then he put an end to the building of the Beis HaMikdash. Why? Because it was disrupting his... He thought the Jews were rebelling. In other words, what they told him was, they're not just building the Beis HaMikdash, they're fortifying the city because they want to rebel. Okay. So, Vayaver Koyal B'chom Achusai.
And Achashverosh, who came later, he had his party, we learned, because he miscalculated. He thought the nevuah was over because it didn't happen, so he was home free.
Yes. Yeah. Because he really... Now, Koresh is doing this 70 years to the date when Yehoiakim was exiled. Yehoiakim was exiled 18 years before the Churban. So this is 70 years after 18 years before the Churban. But in fact, the 70 years are fully going to be over from the Churban, because there are two nevuahs of Yirmiyah, one from the Galus of Yehoiakim, and one from the Churban Yerushalayim. Okay.
I just one more question. I wasn't here last week. I don't know if we discussed. When it says, Libnos spoke, Bias Yerushalayim, Asher Yehuda.
I'm not up to that yet.
Oh, you didn't get there yet? Okay.
Where are you?
Second pasuk base.
Okay, let me just. I'm still finishing Aleph here. Okay. Vayaver kol b'chol malchusai, and he let out a proclamation in his whole malchus. V'gam b'michtav leimar, and he also let out a proclamation in writing. Now this is very noteworthy. That not only did he declare it, but he also allowed it to be promulgated through writing. Because if you remember, the Persians, they are very careful that when something is in writing, they honor it greatly. How do we know that? Right? We read in the Megillah, anything written in the seal of in the signature of the Melech cannot be revoked. So that is why Koresh not only pronounced it orally, but he also allowed it to be transcribed. Okay, pasuk base.
There's a note here.
Yeah.
The first two psukim of Ezra are the last psukim of Divrei Yom.
Yeah, that's right. Correct. The first two psukim of Ezra are the last, and that's why the Ramban says Sefer Ezra follows Sefer Divrei Yomim. That's why there's a vav. That's the opinion of the Ramban. Right. Good. Okay. Pasuk base. Kayamar Koresh Melech Paras. So says Koresh, the king of Paras. All the kingdoms of the earth, God, the master of the heavens, gave me. And he commanded me, to build him a house, in Yerushalayim, Asher Yehuda. That is in the country of Yehuda. In other words, Jerusalem, Israel.
Is there another Jerusalem? Why it should be Yehuda?
Okay, it's giving a precise address. Well, we're going to deal with that soon. But it is very noteworthy. Now, I just want to mention, Koresh says, all the kingdoms of the world God gave me. Is that in fact true? Right? We quote in the Kippah. So we mentioned last week that there were the Gemara Megillah and Daf Yud Aleph and Aleph says there are three kings that ruled over the whole world. Who were they? Achav, Achashverosh, Nebuchadnezzar. Right? Achav, Achashverosh, and Nebuchadnezzar. And Tosfos asks, what about Alexander? No, we're only talking about kings that are mentioned in the Chumash. So the Gemara asks on Yud Aleph Amud Beis, but Koresh ruled over the whole world. What's the proof? Because he said so. So the Gemara says just because he said so doesn't mean it's true. He was just self-aggrandizing himself.
Didn't he inherit what Achashverosh had?
Well, Koresh came before Achashverosh.
We're talking about the first Koresh.
We're talking about, no, there's only one. We're talking about Koresh came.
No,
You mean he inherited from Daryavesh? Yeah, but he expanded. But nevertheless, the Gemara says that what he said is actually not true. He did not rule over the world. He was just promoting himself. Now, what's important is the expression Kol mamlechos haaretz, all the kingdoms of the world. Nasan li Hashem. Who's Hashem? Elokei hashamayim, the God of the heavens. Says the Malbim. Why is he the God of the heavens? In fact, if I'm remembering now, Rashi in this week's Parsha talks about whether Hashem is called the God of the heavens or the God of the earth. Right? When Eliezer is looking, was condoling with Abraham, so what does the pasuk say? It says like this: V'Avraham zaken baba yom Hashem berach zama makov. Hayom Avraham alav dezakam v'yom V'ashviacha b'Hashem lekei hashamayim v'lekei haaretz. Remember? Mm-hmm. This week's Parsha. Don't say we don't learn Chumash here. And then, so Rashi's bother in Pasuk Zayin, Avraham says to Eliezer, be careful you don't bring my son over there. Why? Because Hashem Elokei Hashamayim took me from my father's house and removed me from there. So Rashi points out why at first Abraham calls Hashem Elokei Hashamayim Elokei Haaretz, and then later he calls him Elokei Hashamayim. Says Rashi, Amar Le, Achshav hu Elokei Hashem Elokei Haaretz. Says Abraham, now Hashem is the God of heaven and earth. Shehergalte b'fi abrios, because I made His name recognized to the world. Aval kishalakachani v'beis avi, but when He took me from my father's house, because nobody recognized Him. However, the Malbim says that why is Koresh calling Hashem Elokei Hashamayim? Listen to the words of the Malbim. Ki chashav she'anhagas haaretz yimsar b'yad mi she'yisman aliyas mibim kaimai. Koresh held God rules over the heavens, and He has appointed me His emissary to take care of the earth. God selected me. Okay. God selected me. Pasuk Gimel. Mi bachem, but mikol amoi. Who among you, from all of his nations, from all of his now, Rashi learns that this was the proclamation. He would write to all the mamlachos the following: Mi bachem mikol amay shel hakadosh baruch hu. Who among all of God's people, meaning this is not addressed to everyone in the world, it's addressed to all the Jews everywhere in the world. Yehi eloi kavimai, God should be with them. In other words, He's not sending a message to every guy, but rather mikol amay, from all of His nation, that's Klal Yisrael, Yehi eloi kav imai, let God be with him, v'yal l'Yerushalayim, and let him go up to Yerushalayim, asher b'Yehuda, that's in Yehuda. Now Rashi learns very interesting that Koresh is saying, who among the Jewish people wants to go up? You want to go up? God will be with you. It's a bracha. It's a bracha. The Malbim learns that he's talking to all the people in the world. Who among all of you is from Hashem's people that you could send them up? Okay? And what? V'yal Yerushalayim, and go up to Yerushalayim asher b'Yehuda. V'yiven es beis Hashem Elokei Yisrael, and build the house of Hashem, the God of Israel. Hu Elokim, He's the God asher b'Yerushalayim. That's in Jerusalem.
It doesn't say Yehuda here, just in Yerushalayim.
Okay. Now, it's interesting. In Pasuk Beis, he says Hashem is the God of the Shamayim. But He has given me
dominion over
earth. But there's one place in earth that even Koresh is maskim that Hashem is the God of, right? Yerushalayim. Elokei Yisrael, Hu Elokim Asher b'Yerushalayim. That's how the Malbim learns. That God is only the God in Yerushalayim, because His Hanhaga of the world, except for Yerushalayim, He gave over to me, or whoever He has appointed. But God retains possession of Yerushalayim. Rashi learns differently. You read it like this. Who wants to go up, build the house of Hashem, the God of Israel? He is Hashem. And where is the house of Hashem? Asher b'Yerushalayim. Asher b'Yerushalayim, according to Rashi, is not describing where Hashem is. Rather, it's describing where the Beis Hamikdash is. In other words, going back in the beginning of the pasuk, you go and build the Beis Hashem. Where is the Beis Hashem? The Beis Hashem is in Yerushalayim.
Did we discuss why in all these cases Yerushalayim is Chosser the Yud? Yerushalayim, Shalom.
Well, there's a chiruk without a yud, right? Why is it missing a yud?
And sometimes there's no chiruk, and it's all pasuk. Like for example, in pasuk Daled, there's no chiruk under the mem sofit either.
No, there's a chiruk between the lamed and the mem.
Yeah, look in the last word in Daled.
No, I have one.
You have it? Yeah, I don't have it in mine.
Yeah.
I have the chiruk in the end of pasuk Gimel. But the mem is just.
I think we had that in Sefer Daniel also. That it's Chaser Yud.
No, I don't have it here, but
It's under the mem.
Yeah, in Sefer Daniel also, it's Yerushalayim is missing a Yud. I don't know, we have to think about that. Now I want to point out something very important. Rabbi Yosef wanted to know why it says Yerushalayim Asher B'Yehuda. Okay, so after the first pasuk, we just said that's the address. You know, when you write, everybody knows New York. You know, when you're sending a letter to Israel, you write Jerusalem, Israel, even though everywhere else is Jerusalem. But nevertheless, why does it keep on repeating it? So the Ramban, in a sefer that he wrote called Sefer HaGeula, says an amazing thing. And that is, Koresh is only giving permission for some Jews to go back to Eretz Yisrael. Not all Jews. There were two waves of exiles. There were those who were exiled with the Aseres HaShvatim. Who was Goyla the Aseres HaShvatim? Sancheiriv Melech Ashur. They were exiled well before Nebuchadnezzar. Koresh is not allowing those Jews to return. He's only allowing the Jews who lived in Yehuda, Shevet Yehuda and Shevet Binyamin, to go back. Everybody else has to stay behind.
He knew who those Jews are?
Yeah.
How did he know that? They were scattered all over the place.
Okay, but the Jews who were in Persia, in Bavel, those were the Jews that Nebuchadnezzar exiled. The Jews everywhere else, Basancherev uBilbal Kala Umais, they were from the first wave. He is not allowing those Jews to return. The Ramban says that is why we'll find, I think it's in Perek Vav, you know how many Jews return altogether? How many Jews return to Eretz Yisrael in the times? Very few. How many is very few?
Less than 100,000.
Good. 42,300. 42,300. Most of those Jews came from Yehuda and Binyamin. I believe 29,000. The other 13,000 came from assorted other Shvatim. Why? Because, says, how do we see that? Says Ramban, because it keeps on saying, go to Yerushalayim, that's in Yehuda, because only Jews who used to live in the region of Yehuda I'm letting go back, but not the Jews from the other Shvatim.
The right of return was only those who had lived there previously.
Yes, that's the first half of it. The first half of it is that's what Koresh allowed. The second half of it, listen to this, may have been on our side. And that is, I'll tell you now, okay, don't tell me, don't say I never tell you secrets. The Ramban writes that the Gemara says in Ksubis that Klal Yisrael took a shvua, and the shvua went like this: Hishbati eschem benois Yerushalayim b'tzvais oy v'ayelois hasada im ta'iru v'im ta'iru es ha'ava ad shetechbat. Says the Gemara in Ksubis, Klal Yisrael took a shvua that we won't return to Eretz Yisrael until Hashem brings Mashiach. And that shvua may be binding, and some say it's even binding today, but that's a matter of dispute.
That's what the Turukata hold.
That's what but that's what the Gemara in Ksubah says, and that's something that you have to deal with. You can't just ignore that because it's based on a pasuk in Tanakh that Klal Yisrael took a shvua that we're not going to return to Eretz Yisrael until the Geula comes.
And how come the Navi...
1 second. So, says the Ramban, right? He was an Orthodox Jew, the Ramban. Ramban says,
But he was fired, no?
that Klal Yisrael did not return in the times of Ezra because they weren't allowed to return in the times of Ezra. Because they took a shvuah that they're not going to return until Mashiach comes. Some Jews did return, like this. The shvuah, something superseded the shvuah. The nevuah of Yirmiyah Hanavi that said that when 70 years are over, Hashem's going to bring you back, that overrides the shvuah. To who did Yirmiyah prophecy that after 70 years Hashem's going to bring us back? Only Yehuda. The Jews that were exiled in the times of Sancheiriv, they took an oath they ain't coming back. And they don't have the nevuah of Yirmiyah to say they can come back. So they, were not allowed to come back. They weren't allowed to come back in the times of the second Beis HaMikdash.
Don't we acknowledge that today the most Jews are from Yehuda and Binyamin?
Yeah, but now the question is, the Ramban gave...
How do we know Yirmiyahu was only prophesizing for Yehuda?
Because
they were
he's
the
saying...
only ones there that he was speaking to.
But so the Ramban learns it was only directed to them.
Okay, and the second thing, the Navi, I don't remember which Navi said that the Mashiach won't come until the majority of the Jews are in Eretz Yisrael. So if...
No, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. There's certain halachos that are only applicable when the majority of Klal Yisrael is in Eretz Yisrael, but that it should be a precondition for Mashiach to come.
I have to find it. Okay.
What about the issue that I raised? I think it's acknowledged that most Jews today are from Shevet Binyamin and Shevet Yehuda.
So right.
So if they were the ones that lived
now, but here's the issue. The only thing that overrides the Shvuah is Yirmiyah's nevuah that after 70 years he can return. But after they returned and left, now the shvuah comes back.
Oh, who said?
No, that's.
Who said? What do you mean the shvuah? First of all, who knows that? I mean,
no, that's acknowledged. That's accepted.
Ganz Klal Yisrael to accept the shvuah that there weren't minorities amongst Jews for everybody.
No. That's that.
To accept that shvuah.
It goes basar roiv hakol. They Klal
Most would say that they wouldn't come back.
No,
Why would they come back?
That's a question, as you know, that we call kasha namaisa. But that's the facts. The facts are Klal Yisrael took an oath; they're not going to come back. The only thing that overrides it is the nevuah of Yirmiyah Hanavi. Now the question is, today, you can't just say, "Well, today is different." No, you can't ignore the shvuah.
I mean, when Dolan brings this up, no one says anything.
No, not true. And first of all, I just
say that shvuah didn't go in Liat Olam.
What? It did.
How could you say that after the Churban the shvuah was reincarnated?
No, it's not. It's not reincarnated l'mafreya. The Klal Yisrael took a shvuah; they're not going to come back. There was a specific nevuah about a specific period of time that they could come back. But after that group of people returned, the shvuah is definitely binding. Now the question is it binding today? There are Gedolei still say, yeah, even today the shvuah is binding, right? Now the question is, why is it not binding? Nobody says that it's not binding because we didn't take you have to know how to deal with it. So there's a tshuva in the Avnei Nezer. There's a letter of the Ar Sameach. But just to say shvuah, that's stam, it's amaratzas. It means you're not familiar with psukim and navi. It's definitely a shvuah that was binding.
So what you're saying is that the establishment of a place for Jews to go after the Churban Lita
is subject to halachic issue.
The Rabbi Shalom had nothing to do with that, and did not.
No, you're not listening. No. If you're Mr. Nathan, if you want to speak politics, then we can speak after
share. Politics.
No, what your question? No, your question has nothing to do with anything I just said. Nothing at all.
Yes, it does. You're saying we have a shore. We are not allowed to go back.
Where do we have the shore? Where is the shore?
It's a pasuk in Shir Hashirim. Okay. Did you learn Shir Hashirim ever?
No.
So then, when you do, then we could discuss the issue. Until then,
I'm not talking politics. I'm talking.
Okay. So if you want to know how we deal with the issue, so there is a letter from the Ar Sameach. Our Sameach says that it's a two-way shvuah, because not only did we take a shvuah, the Goyim took a shvuah that they wouldn't torture us. So once the Goyim broke their end of it, So our end may not be binding.
When
But-
did they take this shore?
It's also a pasuk in Shir Hashirim. It's a Gemara in Ksubas. Others learn the Balfour Declaration. In other words, the shul is we're not going to come back without authorization of the Goyim. But once the Goyim authorize, then it might be different. This is a whole sugya. There's a letter from
the...
What?
The UN authorized also?
Yeah, well, we may not know. There may have been a previous authorization since 1917.
Two authorizations.
In any event, that's what the Ramban says. Ramban learns, very interesting, it's important to know. Most of Klal Yisrael did not return in the times of Ezra. You know why? Because they weren't allowed to. It was an Isser Dairaisa. What's the Isser? The Isser was the Shvuah. They took a Shvuah.
Same reason today. No, most don't go.
So that's what the Ramban learns. I'm not telling you a minority view. I'm telling you the Ramban. Ramban says twofold. First of all, Koresh is only giving permission to who? To the Jews who used to live in Yehuda. And then the Ramban adds, the other Jews, he says, we're not allowed to go. Very interesting.
Who wrote Shiur Shiur?
Shlomo HaMelech.
That's way before. Many years before.
Before the 1948? Yeah, it was before 1948.
Many years before.
Before what?
Before the
Exactly.
The Gaulists.
Right, so Yirmiyah's promise that we're going to go back allows that the Shvuah is not binding on those who are subject to Yirmiyah's Nevuah. Right? Okay. Look, Rabbi say, if you're familiar with the sources, so we could discuss it. If this is the first time you're hearing it, you know, it's can't challenge something that you're not familiar with. Okay. Fine. Pasuk Dalet. V'chol hanishar mikol hamakoymos. Anyone who remained in any of the places, Ashehu Garsham, that he lives in. In other words, there were Jews who, of Yehuda, who remained in their place. Why? They don't have any money. How are you going to make the long, arduous trip up to Yerushalayim? Especially when you get there. When you get there, right? If they're building a shul, and you come to participate, what's the first thing they want from you? Money. So if you don't have money, you ain't going, right? Building fund, dinner fee, all kinds of donations they're going to ask. So whoever from among the Jewish people remains in their place, presumably because they don't have money, Yinasu anshe makaymai. The people of the place should raise them up. Bekesef, uvezahav, uverchush, uvehema. They should give them silver, gold, possessions, animals. Im hanadava, with a donation lebeis Elokim, to the house of God, Asher b'Yerushalayim, that is in Yerushalayim.
So who gets this? The people who currently or from Yehuda who are going to stay in Yehuda?
Yeah, no. The people who were from Yehuda who wanted to stay behind in Bavel or Paras, right, because they couldn't make the trip because they didn't have money. So Koresh is telling the Goyim, go
give them money.
Give them money
for staying in.
No, give them money to be able to go up.
Oh, so he says, give them money so you can get them out of here.
Give them money to encourage them to make the trip. Yes, give them money to allow them to go up. Okay. Besides the money that you send up for donations.
He wants the guy just to give some donations to build a base and make the flyer.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Can you imagine that? It sounds like you might say Mashiach. Right? Koresh is saying that all the Goyim, they need to pay and to support the movement of Jews who are going up to Yerushalayim, first of all, to encourage them to go, and to send along donations. Now it's interesting, with the donation...
Rabbi, what does it mean, V'chol HaNishar Mikol HaMakomos? Isn't that the residue of those who decide not to go up?
Because that Rashi explains, because they can't afford what it takes to go up and to participate in the building.
Why would anybody tell the Goyim I can afford to go up? Because by saying I can't afford to go up, they're going to get all the entitlement programs. They're going to collect. Look, if they say I don't need the money, they're not going to get anything.
You always have yesh v'yesh. You always have yesh v'yesh. There are some people, even when they're entitled to benefits, they like to do it on their own. Right? A guy.
We don't know too many of them.
A guy who
from Jews.
A guy who has some self-respect. He's not collecting the benefits if he's not deserving of them. Some people say no, even though they're very wealthy, they'll take the food stamps. Right? So anyway, now it's very interesting, and we're going to address this. What do you mean with donations for the Beis HaMikdash? Are Goyim allowed to donate to the Beis HaMikdash?
Why not?
They're allowed to send the carbon.
They're allowed to send the carbon, but they're not allowed to donate to the Beis HaMikdash. What?
The doors.
The name the gay after it, no? He wasn't a Jew.
Who says he was a guy?
Black over there.
Yeah, the guy from Lebanon area.
Cyprus, no?
We have on something in the base of Mikdash. There's the imprint of Shushan Hira.
That big plaque is a generous Gentile.
The Gemara says in Erchin, you can't take donations from Goyim for the Beis HaMikdash.
Is that for operating expenses or the building fund?
What's the difference? Either
If you take it to build it, then maybe you don't want to take it for the carbonos, for the upkeep.
I think it's the same.
If I could do this, why can't I do that? Yeah, he's right. He's right. No, Ruben is right. Those gates were right. And why? And there's on something in the Beis HaMikdash. There was something, the tipus of Shushan Habir. Is the shul allowed to take money from the guy?
So the halacha is that the Gemara says in Erchin and Avav that you don't accept donations from Goyim for the Beis HaMikdash.
What about these?
And we learned that out from the fact that we didn't allow the Shemroinim to participate in the Binyan Beis HaMikdash. So how could we accept these donations from Koresh and all those that Koresh has commissioned? So Tosfos says that you know why this was allowed? Here, I'll read to you Tosfos. There may be a difference between building and upkeep, between the building but Tosfos proves that Koresh, we took Koresh's donations even for the building of the Beis HaMikdash. How can we do that? The answer is, remember the Nevuah of Yeshaya? Yeshaya prophesied that Koresh would build the Beis HaMikdash. So if we have a Nevuah that Koresh would build the Beis HaMikdash, that's giving you a dispensation to be able to accept donations from the Goyim.
But he's an exception to the rule.
He's an exception to the rule. Koresh, because of the pasuk, Hu Yivnei Iri, but otherwise we cannot accept donation. Now, in the times of the second Beis HaMikdash, was the Shechina there or was the Shechina not there?
No.
The Shechina was not there. Why was the Shechina not present in times of the second Beis HaMikdash? So the Machlokes and the Gemara in Yuma on Daf Tesam and Beis between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan says the Shechina was not present in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. Why?
Koresh built it.
Because it was built by the hands of a guy. The first Beis HaMikdash was built by who? Shlomo. Shlomo built it. It had Kedushas HaShechina. The second Beis HaMikdash was built by Koresh. The only people who could bring Shechina are descendants of Shem, like the pasuk says, Yaft Elokim, the Yefes, the Yishkoin Ba'alishin. Says Reish Lakish now. You know why the Shechina wasn't there? Because most Jews didn't return. Which is very interesting in light of the fact that the Ramban learns they weren't allowed to return.
Contradictory.
So you have to say, among the Jews of Yehuda and Binyamin who could have returned, most didn't return. And we can understand why they didn't. Because if 95% of Klal Yisrael is not allowed to return, so why are you picking on me? The people from Yehuda and Binyamin say, everyone else is not allowed to. My first cousin, my sister, my brother, right? My sister married a guy from Zvulun. She's stuck behind. I got a Rebbe in the Zvulun yeshiva. Now I have to go back to Eretz Yisrael. I mean, by that time, they were all geknipped and gebindert, right? They were all mixed together. Right? You like that?
So you're saying that they knew exactly where all these Jews were?
Possibly.
From the 10 tribes.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting.
So do we know that the Mamish that even though Koresh gave the Haskama to build the Beis HaMikdash, that the actual physical work was done by Goyim? As opposed to, it's one thing to get the authority, go ahead and build it. But
No.
I mean,
No, we don't know. We'll see. Okay, we'll see. Let's see a little bit more. Vayakumu Rashi Havos. And the heads of the fathers got up, of the families, Yehuda, Ubenyamin, Ba'Kohanim, Ba'Halavim. That's all who's returning, right? Like the Ramban explained. Only Jews from Yehuda, Binyamin, because Binyamin's Chelek was also from Yehuda, and the Kohanim and Leviim, L'choyel, to all, Heyer Holakim Esrucha, that God aroused their spirit, Lalois, Livnois Esbeis Hashem, to go up and build the house of Hashem, Asher B'Yushalayim. Very interesting. How do we read this pasuk? Who got up? People from Yehuda, Binyamin, Kohanim, and Leviim, to everyone that Hashem aroused their spirit. The Rashi learns the lamed of L'choil is together with everyone else that God aroused their spirit. The Kohanim, Leviim, Yehuda, Binyamin went up together with everyone who Hashem aroused their spirit. However, the Malbim learns beautiful. You know who went up? Yehuda, Binyamin, Kohanim, Leviim. All of these, L'choil, all of the above mentioned are people who Hashem aroused their spirit. Not those above mentioned went together with those who Hashem aroused their spirit, but all the above mentioned are those whom, says the Malbim, to who does Hashem arouse their spirit? To whom is Hashem going to give the Hisayrus to go up to Eretz Yisrael? Those who take the initiative and the desire and the first step to go. So Hashem says, oh, you want to go, you took the first step, I will take you the rest of the way there. Habal Taher, Messiah Noisai. But somebody who's not Bolatayr, Hashem is not Messiah. That's what the Malbim learns. Take a look. Ki l'chol ha'olim. Then says the Malbim. He says like this.
Learned that the only people from Yehuda that went up were Rashi Avos.
No, the Rashi Avos of Yehuda. Here, look what the Malbim says.
What about the rest of Yehuda? They didn't go. If the Malbim's saying this is only defining who it was that was Hey or Elokim Esrucho, with the Kohanim Leviim, it had to be Rashi Avos Yehuda. What happened to the rest of the people of Yehuda? They had no influence on them. They saw just the Kohanim.
So Malbim learns most prominently, in other words, Ayakumu, who got up, most prominently Rashi Avos Yehuda, but not to exclude those who are not Rashi Avos. But he says, who gets what we call a Sarusa de La'ela? Only those who first have the Sarusa de Latata, those who arouse themselves, the Rebbeinu Shem comes in and takes them. B'chol Svivoy Seyem, and all the surrounding Goyim, Chizku Bidehem, they supported them. B'chlei Chesef, with silver, Uvazav, Barchush, with possessions, V'abehema, Uvamigdanois, with delicacy, with expensive items, Levad, aside from Al Kol Hisnadev, all the donations. Now, just one last thing, the Malbim says, aside from the donations, right? Aside from the donations, they also supported them. Now, the Malbim just points out, it should say Chizku Yedehem. They strengthen their hands. What's Chizku Biyedehem? Says the Malbim, the Jews who were lagging behind, and didn't want to go, so the Goyim gave them the money. Ordinarily, that would encourage them. They didn't feel it. Since they didn't arouse themselves, they didn't feel the encouragement. The encouragement was in their hands, but they didn't get encouragement from it. It was just, in other words, normally when you say you encourage someone, you're mechazik yedehem. Mechazik bidehem was they had the item, but they didn't get the chizik from it.
The money and
Right. They didn't have the Seiros. Okay, Rabbi, say have a wonderful day.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.